Hey, what's happening? It's Andrew Grillos here. I'm going to tie for you this beadhead wire-bodied worm. This was one of the most important flies for me when I was having to rebuild all my fly tying skills as a result of my stroke. This one took me a while to figure out. I had to actually text my good friend Charlie Craven and ask him how to do this guy, because I initially struggled with order of operations and sequencing after my stroke. So I couldn't quite figure out how to do this guy, which was kind of humbling, being a pretty high level fly tyer and having a hard time figuring out how to tie a worm. Let's get my thread through the bobbin here and get ready to get after it. There we go. I'm going to start the thread right over the ultra chenille, right behind the bead there. Alright, so that's like a dozen wraps or so, nice and tight, right on top of each other there. So I'm going to bury this ultra chenille and try to lay down a nice uniform underbody, because we will eventually be wrapping wire over this. That should do. I'm going to advance my thread up next to the bead. Got some size medium hot pink wire here. I'm going to sneak the end of it into the back of the bead and tightly secure it. I like to do this fly kind of in a two-tone combo. I'm going to undo some of these wraps that are holding down that back portion of the pink ultra chenille. Get my wire out of the way. I'm just undoing a bunch of excess wraps so I can cut this. Get it out of there. I hope it just folded over on me when I tried to snip it. There we go. Cut that out. I'm going to try to tightly secure this up front here so it doesn't twist on me like it just tried to. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and start my wire in here, kind of on my side of the hook shank. I want to get a nice uniform underbody, because this will be the foundation for wrapping our wire. If you have a lumpy underbody there, you're going to have a lumpy wire body. Alright, I'm going to get my thread up to where I want to end it at there. Alright, my next step is actually to tie in the kind of opposite color piece of ultra chenille. I'm going to go kind of around where the point of the hook is, right on top of the hook shank. So that's 4 nice tight wraps to secure it there. Let's get this all out of the way. And my next step is going to be to kind of shimmy my wire right through that little gap where I tied down the ultra chenille. I'm going to try to pull the ultra chenille out of the way and make uniform touching wraps with my wire here right in front of that ultra chenille. Ideally we'll cover the underbody with this wire with nice tight touching wraps. This is an easy step to kind of mess up and end up with a sloppy looking fly if you just take your time and make sure to get these wire wraps nice and even and touching. I think that's pretty good there. I'm going to go ahead and secure this behind the bead. Oops. Alright, great. I like what I've got going on. I'm going to go ahead and bend this wire back and forth until it breaks, as opposed to sneaking my scissors in there to cut it off. Alright, so I've got that. Now I'm just going to try to line this purple, kind of wine colored ultra chenille up so it goes right along the top of the hook shank. Got like 4 nice tight wraps securing it there. I'm going to go ahead and cut this close just so I can kind of hide it under my whip finish in a minute. My whip finish tool's across the room on my desk, so I'm going to go ahead and do a hand whip finish with my fingers. Yeah, that was like a 6 wrap whip right there. I'm going to follow it up with just like a 4, just for durability. That's pretty good right there. I'm going to go ahead and kind of trim my thread and get it out of the way. And lengthwise, the back portion of my worm here is a little bit longer than I like. I'm going to trim it just a little shorter there. And I'm just going to try to gently touch it with a lighter little flame to get that tapered tip right back here. That step right there, I like to lick my finger just so I don't burn myself, and then just kind of roll it in my fingers. If it fully melts, then you end up with this kind of squiggly, ugly looking worm. And if you can just catch it like I did, just give it a little roll there. Let's see how I did. We'll check the wire wraps underneath it there. Those are pretty nice and even. Clean enough. A great thing about fishing these bright pink worms is if you're kind of in stained water, as we've got kind of like, we're pre-runoff right now, it's like late springtime. All the rivers are going to kind of come up and get a little dirty. And these stand out, the bright colors with that neon bead. And I've had some really phenomenal days fishing like kind of stained water with these bright colored worms. I had a guide trip on the Yakima River in Washington. It was just incredible. I switched to a neon pink worm for my guy and probably hooked like 20 fish in like half a day. It was just a phenomenal day. The Yakima River doesn't give fish up easily, so that was super nice to have a really productive day when the fish were totally keyed in on the hot pink worm. It's just like a super effective pattern to have in your box. You just always want to be pretty stocked up on worm options. It's sort of like one of the most basic and kind of like general flies to tie. And for me, that's why it was such a humbling experience having to text my good buddy, like, how do I tie this worm? Hopefully you could kind of pull out the order of operations that I did there at the beginning. That wire body under there adds a little bit of weight to the fly, makes it a little bit more dense, so this thing sinks really quickly. If I can get away with adding less weight to my line when I'm nymph fishing, I'd consider it a success. I like to fish a little bit heavier flies and less split shot.